Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about parallelism. So parallelism is a rhetorical or literary or grammatical device in which a particular structure or a way of framing something, a way of organizing something, describing something, or setting up a sentence is repeated at least twice, sometimes more. This is the term for this, of course, comes from parallel lines or something like this in geometry, right? Where you have two lines that move alongside one another. They will be similar to one another, and it's a kind of doubling or a multiplication of the same basic thing. So this can work on a very sort of not low level in the sense of like an assessment of quality, but in the sense of like, this can work on a very sort of detailed level with things like grammatical structures. So the way that a sentence is set up may involve parallelism. And this can be very sort of deep, significant parallelism. Some examples of parallelism, literary parallelism, and I'm getting these from Wikipedia's page on parallelism in grammar, but these are good examples. And I will give you other examples that don't come from this. So in John F. Kennedy's inaugural address as president, he said, "Let every nation know whether it wishes us well or ill that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, to assure the survival and the success of liberty." So that verb any noun, that is linguistic parallelism. What that, and we get the same kind of thing in Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, and that a government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from the earth. Blank, preposition, I think. Preposition the people, etc., etc. So again, what these do on the linguistic level is they create a pattern, and humans love patterns. We're generally pattern-seeking animals, and so by creating patterns, you can draw attention to a particular thing. It creates emphasis on that thing, which is why usually parallelism linguistically is used to draw attention to the most important pieces of a sentiment, right? That's not always necessarily the case. Often in sort of big, high rhetoric or fancy rhetoric or something like this, this is used to create emphasis on the most important things. But it also can just sound better because it's more consistent. There is a consistency to it that sounds much more pleasing than the more sort of jarring approach that sometimes comes when you don't use parallelism. So, for instance, again, Wikipedia gives these examples. A sentence not using parallelism would be, "She likes cooking, jogging, and to read." And that doesn't sound bad necessarily, but it doesn't sound as good as the two versions that they give that incorporate parallelism. She likes cooking, jogging, and reading, or she likes to cook, jog, and read. So because each of those is grammatically in the same form, right? The infinitive for to cook, jog, and read, or the gerund for cooking, jogging, and reading, the sentence is more consistent. So it sounds more natural partially because we don't have to change the framework through which we're thinking about that verb in the sentence, right? Because with she likes cooking, jogging, and to read, we have two gerunds and then the infinitive. And again, it's not confusing necessarily, but it's that little bit of extra cognitive work that we have to do to jump from the gerunds to the infinitive, as opposed to gerund, 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 or infinitive, 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 right? So this is another way that even for sentences that aren't that important, we can just improve the flow of our language. We can improve the flow of our writing, our speaking, the way that we present information, so that it's going to sound as smooth and sophisticated to readers as possible, or to listeners as possible. So the other element of parallelism is what I would call more literary parallelism, but that's not necessarily a super accurate description, because this can be used in rhetoric as well, but it's sort of larger scale, where particular elements of a story or an argument or a play or a poem or whatever it is develop along the same lines. So, for instance, you might have a coming-of-age novel in which you have two characters whose stories are each being told independently, and those characters are each overcoming a challenge in their move toward adulthood. This would be a parallel structure, a parallel literary structure, in which those two characters' experiences almost mirror one another. And by mirroring one another through that paralleling, our attention is drawn to the elements of that character growth, right? So these kinds of things, these larger structures of putting together an argument this way, putting together an argument this way, and presenting them sort of alongside one another so that each one becomes stronger and each one gets more of our attention, more of our focus, as we recognize that the parallelism is a form of commentary on what each of these things is doing and why each of them is important. So that's really what's cool about parallelism, right? It is an emphasis technique, a highlighting technique. It draws our attention to a particular thing through the repetition of a similar structure or technique.